A big thank you. I was sitting out there listening to the session so far, so it's going to be a very, very tough job to really follow up on all the good stuff that's happening. So I promise I'll do a good job. If I don't, just boo me off, no problem. At least that'll ensure that the session ends, on time, and you'll kind of get back on your other sessions. That said, my session is, in a way, fairly unstructured. It's not about what's going on out there or to talk about tools, techniques, etc. No. I don't want to do that. What I want to do, and my topic was social media, is I want to walk you through some stories. These are stories of real people in the real world out there, somewhere far away from a nice air-conditioned place that we are in, and just for some time experience their life. How they use social media, how they use digital, what is their business, who are their role models, what are their challenges, right? So that's what we do. So this will be a little journey into Bharat. There are a lot of photographs in my presentation, and a lot of them feature me as selfies. It's not because I'm a megalomaniac or something like that, no. It's just that it was a nice and easier way of just connecting with the audience I was meeting out there. So something that I've always believed in, that the head of social media is really the customer. And this is a point I've picked from Amit's presentation, that it's a very good thing when your consumers come on social media and talk about you, even if they're abusers. Even if they are the most bizarre things on the planet Earth that they're saying, fantastic. Sometimes many of them come and write to us that, "Arey Pankaj ji se chai mila dijiye, chai pilwa dijiye," etc. and all. Very good. At least they're talking, right? Or some may even write and say, "Arey inko kyun liya? Ye to criminal hai." Okay, very good. I will not work with you because he's a criminal. Okay, very good. But at least the guy is talking, right? So that is a nice thing. So let me just jump into this little thing, right? So this is just to kind of set context. As I said, we'll meet real people, we'll hear their stories, their trysts with social media, and when you hear me, when you see their stories, when you read their stories, what I want you to do is start thinking that what experience will matter for this customer? How do you reach out to this guy? How much more physical do you need to be in your distribution or in your experience part? How much more digital should you be? And what kind of analytics, KPI, and all the other bells and whistles that come along should be really there for this kind of consumer? And as with any session, it's your session. This is interactive. So even during the course, just feel free to raise your hand and let's have a conversation. It's nothing that, let's wait for the end. No. Let's really talk, take questions as we go along so that it just gets a little more interesting for every single person. These are my journeys. I found them interesting. I hope you do too. So this is the first of my stories. This is somewhere in the Aravalis. It was a town called Jahazpur, which is in Tonk district. Now this guy runs a small shop where people can come and file affidavits, transfer money, open a bank account, do some basic stuff. Now just look at him, right? This is the guy, Hitesh. He and his sister are avid K-pop and K-drama viewers. I mean, you're like literally middle of nowhere in the Aravalis, okay? It was a pretty crazy place. There was nothing for miles around. Almost like hilltop kind of stuff. Maybe, a couple of centuries ago, folks were out there fighting very, very vicious battles. K-pop, K-drama, clued in. Okay, BTS, names, what are they up to? Full on. I kind of had invited her to be a part of the selfie, and the man gave me a look, probably not happening. So anyway, that is a cultural context there. They have the reputation in the local market of being in sync with all the stuff. So people say, no, kuch bhi hame pata lagana hota hai. What is going on? Kya hai? Nahi hai? Man, this is the brother-sister duo to go to, right? So the entire town of Jahazpur, for them, they were the influencers. They run a service setup, filing affidavits, typing letters, insurance, cash management stuff. Very simple. Simple mantra in life. Focus on the key decision maker. In any interaction, the rest are distractions, right? Something that you would probably read in the HBR every now and then. Very actively, they were following thought leaders and business leaders on YouTube, Twitter, etc., and were being influenced by it. So, far away somewhere, very difficult to locate on a map. I think this place has a population of around maybe 13,000 or 14,000 or something. Our folks, and if you can just see his board behind, he works for insurance companies, Fino, whole lot, right? Offering a whole lot of services. So just see how this consumer is consuming digital, social in such a big way. What I want you to do is hear his stories and the stories of a few others is as a brand, what would you do? How would you reach out to this kind of an audience? What kind of an experience would you want to give this kind of consumer who has the power of influencing people around him who may not necessarily be consuming you right now, but probably would consume you because this guy says so. Let's look at the next story. Udaipur. Again, this is the outskirts. Here is a husband-wife combination, Akash and Chameli Roy. They run a small little outlet, and their roles are pretty well defined. So Akash manages the front end of the business. He goes out, cash to be picked up somewhere, some document to be given somewhere, somebody to be met, etc. He keeps running around. Chameli, the wife, runs the shop, right? So she's kind of holding fort. She's the solid, sheer wall of a building, which kind of keeps the entire business going because she's the one out there at the counter 24/7, not 24/7 really, but about 12 hours a day. And they are in a business of, for the type of financial products, money transfer, bank account opening, the whole stuff. Now this is interesting. They've watched all Shark Tank India shows, right? Clued in. Who's getting what kind of funding, why, what businesses are doing well over there. And the man, and as a family, they idolize Piyush Bansal. As he said, dharti se jude hue hain. So look at what they're picking up when they are watching all this. Very, very successful distributors, big believers in the power of social media. So it was not that they were highly educated or very, very good in speaking anything, nothing of that sort. But what they were very, very clear about is that in running a large distribution business that they had, so they had sub-agents, etc., spread all over the district, they were using social media to grow that network, to interact with that network. And very importantly, were getting influenced by a lot of stuff that they were consuming in the OTT space, like the other guys in the social media space, right? So these are regular consumers in a regular world, normal people, but just see the role that social media plays. It's not at all pervasive as we often believe, but it is definitely nudging them to consume better, to sell better, to buy better. Let me get to the next story. A very, very interesting guy. Right, so Banaskata, anyone? Been there? Seen that? Know about it? Right? I mean, spectacular place, right? I mean, not many people go there unless they really have to. But, I mean, my job requires me to go there. So I met this guy at a petrol pump. And we generally got chatting over a cup of tea. I mean, we'd finished the tea by then, so that's not in the picture. This guy was tracking the Ukraine-Russia war, and this is, I think, March of the previous year. He was tracking this on Instagram, okay? Instagram. He actually believed that the war is going to spread to India and that blue-eyed blondes with guns will accompany this invading army. Because, those were kind of things which are very popular, those photographs of Ukrainian models or sports people, celebrities, etc., all dressed up, holding guns, I think, just building up morale. But he actually believed that they would accompany that invading army because ultimately everybody has to attack India was his whole feeling because that India is the best place in the world. Plain and simple. You can't doubt that, right? And he was hopeful that the army will get the better of them. Actually, at this point in time, I called up my chief operating officer, Major Ashish, saying, look, if this happens, can you protect this guy? And we actually had to talk to him saying, don't worry. The army is capable of handling, blondes with, blue-eyed blondes with guns. He has a shop near our branch. He already has a very good idea of what a large bank or a good bank is. Somebody who's omnipresent, like Bank of Baroda. He was, in fact, driving back and taking his scooter or his bike back to Surat, and his brother had told him, whenever you want money or you need help, stop at a bank branch. So simply he has just got it in his head, anyone who's present, omnipresent is a good large thing. Addicted to Instagram Reels, very limited banking experience. So in the whole technology, algo-driven world of underwriting, probably nobody could figure his credit worthiness. He struggles with it. But look at him. He consumes digital media, has a viable business. A real consumer selling fafda jalebi somewhere in Surat, a native of Banaskata, addicted to Instagram Reels. In fact, Instagram was his source of information. Right? So now what do you do? How do you interact with consumers like this? What story do you tell this consumer? How do you get a consumer like him to prefer your product, right? What's the kind of experience are you going to give this guy? How much will it be? How much should be digital? How much should be physical? These are questions that I want to leave you with. Do I have an answer to it? I'm hand on heart? No. These are all journeys that we as brands have to undertake. We at Fino are undertaking this, and as it was read out in my bio, highly commoditized business, and these are the kind of consumers we work with, and this is how they consume digital media or social media, and then these are the ones that we are working with to expand our business. At this point, before jumping into the next bunch of stories, I'll kind of take a breather, questions, thoughts, anything? Okay, I get the hint, I'm bad, so, okay, thanks, yeah, sure, you saved me.
So, generally, when we talk about the customer in any business and mostly like in banking, we generally don't look into the say individual customer. We generally try to segment them, fragment them. How that strategy of customer segmentation works in these kind of scenarios where you are saying each and every customer is very different than others?
Okay, so good question. See, ultimately segmentation definitely works because, see, while consumers are different, their stories are different, but when you start aggregating information, you'll start realizing that fundamentally there are just 4 or 5 rules or ways in which they're consuming you, right? So depending on how you want to segment, I mean, you can segment demographically, attitudinally, by transaction patterns, whatever is their variable. But everywhere you'll start figuring that even though the behaviors may be different at times, a lot of the underlying variables will be the same. So if you look at all these stories, right, what you will see is that consumption of digital, for example, reliance on it, or certain other such factors are common themes. So even they may be demographically fairly different, but there is that certain something that social media is doing for them, which is making them consume or is influencing their way of working. And one thing that I always say to everyone, and people find it hard to believe, but when it comes to BFSI, India is insanely homogeneous as a country. We are insanely homogeneous. Go to the remotest part of the Northeast, or go to somewhere in the Rann of Kutch or anywhere in Tamil Nadu, behavior around money is a function around the life stage you are at, and not probably the area that you belong to. So which is a good thing. So actually that makes segmentation far more easier in the context of India, and I guess even globally in some sense. There was a question somewhere here, I guess. Thanks. The next one, since we were talking Northeast. So it's 80 kilometers from Shillong. Actually, this is probably about 6:30 or 6:45 in the morning. Generally saw a shop open and we just went in and decided to chat with her. She's a school teacher turned a doorstep banker. So she taught in a local school and she was running a small little kiosk for State Bank of India where she provides last mile banking services. And as she very proudly said that people trust her more than SBI. So she said, look, in this area, it's me whom they trust. Right? It's not the bank. There is something called the bank somewhere, but in this area, I am the bank. So plain and simple. She shops a lot online, but does cash on delivery because she has to travel almost 40 kilometers somewhere to pick up that product. People do not deliver close to her village. And there, literally, the rule is that you just have to come to the distribution point and pick it up. Brands are reluctant to offer them, pay in advance and that kind of stuff. Facebook, Instagram are big in her life. They dictate the way she styles, the way she dresses, and a whole lot of stuff. Her mother runs a provision store, and she pushed her daughter to take up something better, teaching and banking. So, and this is picture perfect area. Sorry, didn't capture it. There was some work going on in her house. So you're there. You can imagine, blue hills, nice green forests. But what's influencing her a lot? Facebook, Instagram. Where is she shopping? She's going online, but because of certain structural elements, is not able to do everything, not able to do payments, etc. online. This is her life. This is her story. Again, when you are to influence her to buy your product, or to buy a policy, or to sell a loan, how do you really reach out to this consumer? What kind of KPIs would you put? The next one. Fascinating guy. Valmiki Singh. This is Gorakhpur Dehat. Okay, so sometimes a lot of the bizarre stuff that you see on the OTT world does happen in some places like this. Not the violence part, but Sharma ji ki bhains, Verma ji ke kutte ke saath bhag gayi, being the news of the day, is fairly common in such areas, right? So this is where you have Valmiki. He's a distributor of financial products. Again, that's the ecosystem I deal with a lot. So very, very basic stuff, basic banking, money transfer, etc. He works with his entire dealer network, and they are spread all over eastern UP, large parts of Bihar, Jharkhand, all over YouTube and Facebook. In fact, he runs a YouTube channel, gets awesome engagement. He answers questions, keeps engaging with the audience. Is there any way we can play the video? We'll have internet, right? I have to what? Escape in? Let's see if we have a minute to kind of play it. Yep. It's not connected, so okay. That's okay. So this guy's videos actually are almost like, the unboxing kind of stuff. So he actually talks about devices used in financial services, and he goes about unboxing them. The kind of stuff that you see those toy guys doing, and talks about it. I mean, who says that an influencer, a finance influencer, has to be a slick, smooth talker, right? Absolute, down-to-earth, Bhojpuri kind of Hindi, but just gets the job done using social media. So this was what I kind of wanted to walk you through. Real life stories, real life people, real life situations, and their consumption of social, how it influences their lives, what is it that it does for them, and leave you with thoughts that, okay, if this is the audience, what do you do? How do you engage? How do you keep nudging him to buy your product? What kind of an experience can you give this consumer who's very clearly going to be somewhere in the physical meets digital kind of world, right? So, questions, thoughts? Because that's all I really have, and I promise the organizers that I will finish on time. So, yeah.
Great. I really like your one-on-one different rural picture, because though I come from the automobile industry, so and that's Maruti, so we are present
Everywhere.
Yeah. So, but I handle the customer experience delivery. So this is one odd cases is really good. Now, how do you kind of put this into an insight kind of thing? See, you have met them personally, so it's there in your head, and definitely see, since you come from that kind of inclination, your way of actually putting it across in your CRM or whatever different forms will be very different as compared to people who are actually selling these products, who may be interacting with these kind of customers day in, day out. How do we kind of make them oriented towards capturing these kind of data, which can be actually used later on by us, as you said, that it's homogeneous and we understand them. So that is where I actually kind of see the gap.
So literally almost two parts, right? One, how do you keep capturing this information into your ecosystem? The answer to that is, it is not easy. It's very cultural, which means that everyone across has to be kind of aligned to picking up these kind of subtle hints, this kind of nuances, if you can so call, because data will not come up with that kind of insight around it. It will be a transaction, somewhere it will show, oh, the guy does low value transaction, maybe not very important, does not really buy too many products from you, so you feel disheartened and say, hey, look, I'm trying very hard to cross-sell this guy insurance, but he won't buy. I mean, why will he buy? He's got Ayushman Bharat, he really doesn't need some insurance plan being shoved down his or her throat. So in that kind of situation, one, it's cultural of getting people aligned to pick up this kind of thing. Yes, there will be more qualitative elements to it, is going to be reality. So you have to accept, while we all live and talk a lot about big data, and I can talk about big data for hours on end, I wear that as a hat too, but there is a certain power to small data. There is a certain power to keeping on picking up these stories, because what they do is, they ultimately just make people aware of their reality. So that's one part. So does a lot of all this chatter go into a CRM or something? The hard answer is no, because it's difficult to put it there. But at least when your frontline team or your folks who are speaking to this kind of a consumer on the phone, they keep reading such stories, they actually start empathizing with this audience. They are able to kind of visualize that guy, saying that, probably, this is what is happening. If this guy who's calling up from whatever, Gadchiroli, in some village by a riverside. That's one. Second part, to your question is, since it's small data, now what do you do? But what this kind of serves as examples, and when you start looking at many of these kind of case studies, is that at a very basic level, challenges are similar. And what we figured after a lot of these kind of conversations is that what mattered were eventually 2 or 3 things of why they wanted to associate with a brand or stay with a product or stay with a service. Reasons for exiting will be 100, but reasons for actually staying with a product or service will be 3, maybe 4. Right? So never really more than that. And this, I can tell you with all my consulting experience, is true for probably 99.9% of products. So once that kind of comes in, you really know, it just helps you start narrowing down your variables. And once your variables are narrowed down, I think life becomes far more easier and less complex. So why, keep making life more complicated by, adding so much of layers to it? Just we look at ways for bringing it down to the bare essentials. Because at the end of the day, the consumer is going to respond to your ability to handle these bare essentials. Yes, there will be a context to his or her specific problem, but that really only comes onto the table when you get into a conversation with a guy. Other than that, once the basics are taken care of, life becomes far easier. At least that's been the learning over the years of doing this.
Thank you.
So I see that you've invested a lot of time in understanding your customer. Was there So you've invested a lot of time understanding this customers, visiting them and going in person, right? What was the selection criteria in the sense that did you look at, okay, these are the people that I need to meet, or these are the cohorts that one of them I should understand so that I could actually extrapolate, when we talk in terms of segmentation or cohort? Was there or was it a random pick, or was there a logic to?
I think that's a very good question. So my way of, when I want to go and meet consumers, and I often hit the field, so I do start with an idea that let me meet my consumers who are doing well with me, right? So the better performing guys, and meet as many as possible. Why better performing guys? Because to that point that I said, that it always, reasons for working with you are few, reasons for not working with you are going to be, hundreds. So best to worry about fewer things. So one is you start meeting those guys. And the other good part, and that's something that I've always enjoyed doing, is just go and meet people at random. I mean, some of them are not even my customers. The lady out in Meghalaya has nothing to do with my bank. I mean, she was a little shop open by the roadside at 6:30 in the morning. And I said, okay, let's just go and chat with her and find out what's going on. Because that's when you start figuring out what's happening in the real world. There's enough and more data on every single platform to tell you stuff. But only when you go out and start talking to human beings and get into their stories, does that data really come alive. And from my perspective, I think it's very, very important that I get it right, because this kind of a consumer, for him or her, there's no plan B at times. So some of us here, if one odd experience goes bad, we'd still stay with something. But for that guy who was tracking the Ukraine war on Instagram, one bad banking experience, and that guy will be switched off from formal banking for a significant time period. Right? So it's saying it's very important to just randomly meet people also. It just helps figure out what's going on. So there is a initial structure, but more often than not, once that's done, it's just walk in, and Indians are the most welcoming people in the world. Wherever you go, you'll get a cup of tea. So that's what matters. Yep. Okay, so thanks. Thank you so much.